correspondent Kristen Holmes. Ladies, I was just in the courtroom not that long ago listening to the vast majority of Blanche's summations, and as a good defense attorney might do, the main thing that he was trying to accomplish was just to say to the jury, you don't have to overthink this. This is really easy. You've got a liar on the stand. All of this is hinging on his word. And that's
to get there, though. I mean, as we laid out in our reporting before court started today, we expected that he was going to argue that the documents here, they're allegedly,
death by 1,000 cuts, by poking holes and all. Was that, in your view, something that was effective to suggest that maybe AMI really wasn't all that in on it?
I think part of what they're doing right now is trying to lay out fact after fact after fact about reasonable doubt. And the reason being that I have talked to a number of Trump legal advisors who do say that there is some concern, or at least they are playing a little bit to the fact that there are these two lawyers that are present on the jury. They want this case to be made to them directly, essentially saying they want
to work with these lawyers, because this is also a complicated case, right? And they're going to understand that a lot of the things that maybe
actually really liked. We know that Donald Trump has a number of very contentious relationships with lawyers, but he was raving about Todd Blanche over the weekend, saying that him catching Michael Cohen in the lie, particularly about stealing the money from Trump Organization, was a pivotal moment in the case. He is ending this case despite the Bob Costello testimony.
Agree or disagree about how this is going for the defense and specifically Todd Blanche, but I think you're right, Paula. There is a sort of lack of narrative that unfolds when you listen to it, especially when you're in that courthouse. You can hear. Reid are back with me right now. Kristen, notably, right as we are speaking, Don Jr., one of Trump's adult sons, he's at the microphone, he's speaking. They were in court today, sitting behind their father, Don Jr., Eric Trump, and Tiffany Trump, a surprising addition. What do you make of the children who have shown up here, notably not Ivanka Trump?
We'll start with who has shown up. So Don Jr.'s team says this is because the reason he only showed up to 2 court dates was because he was
in the White House. They were the 2 family members who were. I would argue this was the weakest moment for Todd Blanche today. This is where he's talking about the impact of the national inquiry.
16 positive stories about Trump, negative stories about his adversaries, his political opponents, were being amplified.
He planted stories about his political opponents in the primary, Ted Cruz and others.
Right, obviously. And Donald Trump has long been a fan of the Inquirer and believed that it has an enormous reach, despite the fact that maybe it's 350,000.
Through and through. Trump believed and believes in the power of the tabloids. But let's get a jury consult.
Guys to come up here. What we were just talking about as Ellie was talking and Laura, Kristen, was Michael Cohen, and now the prosecution, I'm sorry, it's been over an hour.
Right.
What you say, kind of clean up on Michael Cohen. That's a long time.
Right, and as Paula said, there's a lot to clean up there. I mean, part of the issue, though, it is showing that the prosecution feels as though there is a number.
Paula, in terms of the time here, though, I know many have said, look, the defense is for that long.
Yeah, I feel badly for the jury. That's probably too long. 2.5 hours for Todd Blanche. That felt like it really went on, and this is going to go. Had to spend that time to clean up because their case does depend on the jurors trusting Michael Cohen.
You know, one thing that's interesting when they were trying to clean up, when they're talking about Michael Cohen, sort of a thing will be effective.
Well, exactly. And I think what we saw the defense do was the truth now.
It is interesting, though, coming into this, we were told, Michael Cohen had said, but also it had been very clear from the prosecution. And as Ellie was saying, they didn't do that.
No, you really can't do it. One thing that Trump is really good about is not leaving a paper trail, which is why it's sort of ironic that we're here for what is effectively a paperwork.
Though, Alan Weisselberg, obviously he's serving time in prison. They didn't call him. He could have either made the case, slam dunk, black and white.
A good witness. He plead the fifth, and you can't bring a witness who you.
Then he put Trump on.
And he's talked about Stormy Daniels, right? And we even have the video, or at least the stills that were entered into court, of Schiller and Trump walking off right before the call was made, indicating that they were together. But then you have.
Blanche didn't make more of this. We knew from our reporting that he was going to bring up the missing witnesses. I'm surprised he didn't hammer a little harder on this, because the defense's theory is that neither one of these witnesses was called because prosecutors worried that it would contradict their story. It's surprising to me, given all the other things that Blanche spent time on, including Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, that he didn't focus on that.
I want to ask you one other thing that happened here. This was Judge Merchan admonishing Blanche for mentioning prison time to the jurors. Obviously, there's been discussion you wouldn't necessarily, if one were convicted in this case as a first-time defendant in Trump's case, obviously maybe likely would not have prison time, but he brought it up and was admonished, obviously, by Judge Merchan. So can you explain, Paula, first, why those comments were so controversial? Why bringing that up is even an issue?
So sentencing is not something for the jury. That is for the judge. That's why that was considered third rail. That's why that got such a rise out of the judge, and why he had to offer that curative instruction.
But does it matter? I guess he's saying for them to know what could be the repercussion of their decision, I would presume was the context in which Blanche was bringing it up, but that's not okay.
He wanted them to think about this. Do you want to put someone in prison based on the words of Michael Cohen? That was the idea. He probably knew that was not appropriate for closings, that would get some pushback. It did, and the judge chose to give a curative.
In the courtroom for all of this, everybody except for Ivanka and Jared and Melania.
The whole family. So I would put these in two separate categories, the Ivanka and Jared of it and the Melania of it. We did not ever think that Melania Trump was going to show up, this humiliated person, and she was never going to come to court and say, oh yes, of course he did this to protect me. That is not who Melania Trump is, and that is not the relationship she has with her with her husband, as I have been told. I was a former president, former husband. Okay, a little bit. So that's what I've been told by a number of sources close to them.
Yes.
That is one part of this. The other part of this is the Jared and Ivanka. So I think that's a little bit more surprising. These are the kids. We're seeing all the other kids and their spouses, other than Donald Trump Jr.'s fiance, Kimberly Guilfoyle. She has not been in court. But they have made a line in the stand. They've put down their foot and said, we are not going to be part of any of this kind of public
arguments. And obviously the prosecution right now, Reid and national correspondent Kristen Holmes. All right, so here we are waiting, and they're listening. They're in there listening.
A matter of time, right? So they believe, and again, this is just some of the sources close to the campaign, some of his senior advisors who have told me this. So, and they know just about as much. There's two options here, that he's going to be convicted or that there's going to be a hung jury. They are hoping, obviously, that they...
And all of this is, it comes down to how one defines the word reasonable. And which is really amazing, right? Such a subjective thing. It's
concern, obviously, in Trump world, and also legal experts, that this becomes a Rorschach.
Obviously, at the core of it. How much time, Kristen, when you look at this, are they spending?
I think it was interesting just to see the defense go over the Stormy Daniels portion of this, saying, over and over again during their closing, that didn't need
to go. As Steinglass was speaking, he said, I've almost never, or what, I'm not exactly sure what the exact wording was, but that was the concept, seen a case that has this much corroboration.
Well, that's a very generous assessment of his own case. I think, again, legal experts across the board all acknowledge.
And then obviously this could go late tonight or into the evening, right? I mean, they have 4 hours allotted, then it gets, the judge will talk to the jury, right? I mean, this is going to go longer than any day we've had so far.
Right. They have to kind of parse this out and decide how exactly they want to handle it. They, being the judge here, has to say, are we close here? Are we going to wrap? Do we want to actually carry this over until tomorrow? I believe he wanted, and that's the defense, specifically wanted it to be 2 to 3 hours to kind of force the prosecution into a time period of the day.
Exactly. Prosecution to leave, because they have no time limit. Clearly, they have no time limit. To leave, an extra 30 minutes and get that extra crack at the jury right before they went to deliberations. It appears that the judge is on board, which is why they're going to stay late today.
I don't know. Sometimes I say, for a best man or best woman speech, shorter is often better. All right. They are taking a brief break, though, in the courtroom, so we're going to take a brief break as well. We'll be back.